Vance?
Wow, who are these people that are so successful all the time? I find them extremely annoying. They always are ready to start something. They're always ready with a new idea. I don't think half of them sleep. They're just always on. They're always charged up. They're always acting like they have the answer when many times they don't. They just don't know how to act without the answer. I got to worrying about that one time when I figured out that I was really annoyed by their success. I mean, all this raising your hand to be first to answer the question, all these late night calls that started off with, I have an idea, or I figured it out. Why wasn't I doing that? Why wasn't I the guy making the calls? It could have had something to do with the fact that I had discovered that I could be the guy that was doing the calls. I hadn't lit my own fire. I've had a lot of chances to light my fire. I had a birthday yesterday. Yay me, I made it. And the best part about my birthday was it was a big one. It wasn't one of those that started with a 0 or a 5. My first big one was when I turned 18. I could drink in the District of Columbia at 18. Unfortunately, it was also the first birthday that I got my first letter from the government asking me to come down and register for the draft. There's the first hint of how old I am. So I happily registered for the draft. I was in high school. I figured that Vietnam thing would be over with, no problem. My dad looked at me and said, son, you better light a fire under becoming an adult, because that one's going to have to require some adult decision making. No problem. I made it into college. I graduated, turned 21 3 years later, got another letter, said, you can vote. I know it sounds a little funny to some of you, but back then when you were 18, you could go get killed for your country, but you couldn't vote, and you couldn't drink. 21 was the big one. The last time I got a letter from the government. Not to mention the fact that they told me 2 days after I graduated from college, there's a report for the draft board that my number had been called. The letter I got yesterday said that I had finally made it to that golden opportunity. I qualified without penalty for Social Security. I was almost as elated as when I got my AARP, my first application for AARP at the tender age of 45. Now, let me tell you what that means to me as someone who lit their fire. That's venture capital. My dad used to call Social Security rocking chair money. To me, it's not. It lit another fire under me to expand my business, reach out to more people. So what is it about that process that has changed for me? I was 35 years in government. What is a government guy doing with his fire lit all the time? I didn't know any other way to be after I made the transition. And it's an easy transition to do if you understand fire. You saw me like this. I lit it with a lighter that has steel and flint. And if you look carefully, it creates a spark. Spark is the first initial essential thing in fire. It's got to be there. It's the ignition point. It's what sets everything off. Even on spontaneous combustion, there's got to be something there that starts that trigger going, that lights those gases, that feeds off that fuel. So there has to be a spark. I'm going to come back to that in a moment. There also has to be fuel. There has to be something there with a combustion rate that will keep going, and the final thing that has to be there is oxygen, breathing room, space. What I found in talking to these wonderful people that are always on, always moving, always being annoying, always stepping out, you know what I hate the most about them? They don't ever feel ashamed. They get up, they fail, they get up again, they fail, they get up again, they fail. It doesn't even bother them. What is wrong with these people? You know, I was raised to just do it right. You know, it wasn't until I failed about the 15th time that I figured out it was okay to fail. That was the stepping stone to success. You had to be willing to take the risk, step off of the ledge, and see if it floats. Now, some of you out here I know are just those kinds of people. Those are kinds of people because you were wired that way. All of us aren't. For the longest time, I thought I was wired to sit on the couch and watch sports. I was looking forward to a retirement that was not doing nothing by the time I got there. It was my encore career. What was it that I used to spark myself? The first spark can happen with people who set an example. And it's breathtaking how it happens when you see it. But most of us kind of go, oh yeah, and then leave it. We don't ever store it away and put it in our little tinderbox to go back to and say, wait a minute, if he did that. And I'm going to give you an example of one that just touched me on the 11th. I'm a hockey fan. I'm proud of being a hockey fan. I used to smash, slash, and burn anybody that was from Boston. You know, those of you who follow sports, you know, you say Boston, but it's the Boston fans. How can that be? But unfortunately, Monday afternoon, I saw one of the most legendary players in the game take a hard fall, slide into a net that didn't give as much as his tibia did. And at the height of his playing career this season, headed on an MVP track, Steven Stamkos broke his leg. The Boston house went silent. Nothing except a hush in the room. This is a guy from the Lightning. He doesn't play for the Bruins. And for many of you who don't understand Lightning, or don't understand hockey, or don't understand those kinds of things, you always try to make it off the ice under your own power. You don't want to have to be helped. And what did Stamkos do? He stood up, went a few inches, and collapsed. That's a spark. That when you take and you file away and say, the next time I think I'm overcome with something, or I've got bad news, or I can't get my energy going, I will never forget Steven Stamkos. Not the hit, not the fall, but he got up, took 2 steps, and fell down, and then he pounded the ice. He was so frustrated. That's spark. That's the difference. Now, every one of you, if you take a moment, you will think about the experience you've had, the people you've known, the situations that you've seen, and you're going to pick out one spark at least before this night's over. You're going to remember somebody that did something that was so inspiring that it's hard for you to forget. It's hard for you to step back. That's that flint on steel stuff that you can use to ignite your own fire. If Stephen, why not me? Why can't I have that drive, that commitment? He's looking at 4, 5, 6 months off. The difference is, those of us who are hockey fans here know he's going to work as hard as he can to try to get back in 3, or 3.5, or 4. What's the difference? He's wired that way. He wasn't born that talented. He took the natural gift he had and worked on it and worked on it and worked on it and honed it into something. That's the first part of spark. The second part of spark that I use is there are things that just charge me up. They get me going. You know what? You look at a video of a baby laughing, there's no way you can't laugh. I have tried. I can't do it. It's just inspiring. Take that, put it away. Put it in your little tinderbox of motivation. Find somebody that you model and say, oh my gosh, if I just could be like this individual, that's the first part. That's the first part. The striking of getting your fire. What's the second? You know, I talked about fuel. You know, here, it's a candle, it's wax. In our cars, it's the vapor created from gasoline. There's got to be a fuel there to keep you going. Otherwise, it's just a spark and nothing happens. I remember when I was a scout and they made me have to rub the sticks together. I don't know why I had a Zippo from the time I was 8. But no, you got to rub the sticks together. And the worst part was finding enough dry stuff to be able to put there so the friction would create it. That's the second human spark, friction. Do something that's outside of your comfort zone. If you find yourself stalled and need to light your fire, do something different. Do something that's not right. Do something that you've never done before. That kind of fuel builds up inside of you so that you have to release. I know that you guys have been so happy you thought you were going to burst. And you've been so excited that you thought you were going to burst. Some of the people I work with are so excited that their head never shuts down. They're constantly thinking, They're constantly planning. But unfortunately, some of that thinking goes toward, oh, what if I fail? What if I do this? What if I do that? You know, the people that Brene Brown talks about when she talks about wholehearted people, those people that use their shame and their testimony and everything else to try to get past those little bumps in life that we all run into, those people don't have that process unless they have an equal or greater amount of, I can do this, somewhere inside. We all have that. It's just that we've talked ourselves out. Now, what about oxygen? What about breath? What about being able to make this thing lift? You know, if I blow on it too much, I snuff it. What happens when a forest fire catches a good upwind or a draft? It spreads. It's all got to be balanced. But how do you get oxygen into your system? First of all, you got to give yourself room for it to be there. All of us walk around with all this stuff that we've piled on the top of us related to what we have to do, what we must do. We make 1,000 lists. You know, I wrote an article not too long ago and put on my blog about totally saturated in the self-help aisle. What the heck do you do when you've leaned in and you've finished the book? I always say take 2 aspirin and call your coach. But there's got to be that next step. There's got to be that next piece of work that's there. You've got to get up off the couch or get out of your office chair, and you've got to take that first step. To be able to do that, you've got to have room to do it. So one of the first things I try to do with myself every morning is clear out all that stuff that doesn't make any difference. Think about what you worried about today, and then think about how much it mattered. Did it really have to burn all that energy for you to be worth it? Or if you took the same amount of energy and said, today, this is what I got to concentrate on. This is what I've got to do. This is what I've got to make happen. That's how you light your fire. You got to have free. You got to room for it. You can't be worried about all the stuff that doesn't matter anymore. Now, coaches have this thing called get rid of your tolerations. We make them make a list of things, and then we ask you exactly the same question I just did. How much of this is really going to make a difference between here and there? If you boil it down to 4 or 5 things that are really going to make a difference, you've got all that energy that you would have wasted trying to filter through that stuff, and you can now put it, you know what that is? That's oxygen. That's fuel. You get the right idea, you get to strike that strike, and boom, off it goes. All of a sudden, you got a roaring idea, and you're headed towards success. But be careful. Be careful. You can be too successful. I don't know anybody that has, but that's what everybody tells us. Wait a minute. You in the back, keep your mouth shut. We're sick of hearing from you. How many of you get annoyed when the same person keeps raising their hand in class? Or the same person keeps talking in a meeting? And pretty soon you just disengage. You stop listening to them. It takes a very creative and organically lit person to say, wait a minute, what did you just say? Where were you coming from? Because we're taught, we're raised to discredit that kind of spontaneous innovation that's there. You know, every good, successful person I've worked with has been fired at least 5 times. They've been too crazy to fit in to the old industrial mode. And if you read anything by Seth Godin or some of the new folks that are out there, they're talking brightly. They're talking with energy about people who are not afraid to step off that ledge, move toward the deal, and they don't give a damn what anybody says about it. And you know what? They get down, they get knocked down, and just like that little doll that we used to use as punching bags, they pop right back up. That's what you got to think about. I'm going to leave you with one final thought. The most important thing that you can do tonight before you go to bed is sit down. 1, count your blessings. First of all, you got to come and hear me tonight, and the other 3 are even better. 2, you're going to get a buck off a beer. At least I think that's what you're going to get. I have no idea. Knowing Andy, he probably raised the beer a buck just so it looked that way. He's not 24 and he has his own bar for nothing. The second thing I want you to do is cover what you did, what was successful, what was good about what you did today. If you got to have it, if you can't close your eyes without running through that tape about what was wrong and what so-and-so said and what was bad about it and what you got to do tomorrow and all that kind of stuff that creates all that head noise that bangs right into your better judgment, your primal judgment. The judgment that allowed you to get to the top of the food chain rather than, it's kind of like you're not the deer in the headlights, you're the one behind the steering wheel. So in that process, I want you to think about all the good things that happened today. All those things you don't ever have to address again. All those things that you don't have to fly over anymore. All that track you don't have to go down anymore. And all those corners you don't have to turn. I promise you, if you just do those two things, count your blessings and then count the good stuff that you got done today. In the morning, you can start all over again. I'll give you 15 minutes to worry about all the stuff that's not going to matter, just like you started this morning. Please promise me that you'll do those two things, and you'll do them religiously. And one more. We're talking about creating oxygen here. Take 5 really good deep breaths, even before you lay down. Get yourself thinking about who you are and where you're at right now. You get up in the morning and you're so worried about what's going on that you fill your head up with stuff. In the evening, all you want to do is go to bed. And presumably, if you don't stay too late at courthouse tonight, so you can remember going to bed, just do that one thing for me. Take that moment, take 5 deep breaths, and say, you know what? I now know how to light my fire. I got to create a spark. I got to make sure there's some fuel there, and I got to give it room to grow. Thank you very much.